Welcome to my channel. Improve your English skills through stories. Listen.
Swan Flock. Once upon a time, in a certain kingdom, there was a king and his wife who had 11 sons and one daughter named Liz. They lived together very happily. But not long after the queen passed away, the king married a new queen who was extremely cruel. She is a witch. One day, she said to the 11 princes,
"You guys should get out of here, fly away and find food like birds."
Immediately, the 11 princes turned into 11 swans and flew towards the dark forest along the coast. Poor Leda had to stay in a thatched hut. At the age of 15, Lydia returned to the royal palace. The queen saw that she was very beautiful, but was angry and wanted to turn her into a swan. But she didn't dare because the king wanted to see the princess. She immediately applied the sap of a peach peel to Lysine's body, turning her black, rubbing rotten ointment on her face, and messing up her long and beautiful hair. No one can recognize the beautiful Leda anymore. When the king saw her, he was terrified and declared that she was not his daughter. Sad Leda escaped from the king's palace and wandered around looking for her brothers. She went to a lagoon and waded into the water to bathe. Her skin became as white as before. Then she continued walking. She met an old woman carrying a basket full of plums. She gave Leda a few fruits. She asked her if she saw the 11 princes flying through the forest. The old woman replied,
"No, but yesterday I saw 11 swans, each wearing a golden crown, landing and swimming in the stream nearby."
Liz said goodbye to the old woman and walked along the stream to the beach. As the sun set, Lizda saw on the horizon 11 large swans with white feathers and golden crowns on their heads, flying toward the mainland. They fly one after another, forming a long white strip. She ran up a high bank and hid behind a bush. A flock of swans swooped down near her. As the sun had just set, suddenly all the feathers fell off, and Lydia was happy to see 11 handsome princes, her beloved brothers. She shouted loudly, ran to hug her brothers and loudly called each of their names. When they recognized their youngest sister, the 11 princes were overjoyed. They both laughed and cried, calling the girl's name. In the morning they turned into birds again and flew away. In the afternoon the brothers flew back, and when the sun set they became human again. The eldest brother said,
"Tomorrow we have to leave and come back here in a year. But you can't leave me here. Do you have the courage to follow us?"
The princess said,
"Yes, you guys take me with you."
During the night they braided a strong net from rushes and willow strings. Lydia slept on that net. As soon as the sun appeared, the brothers and sisters turned into swans and used their beaks to pull the net and fly into the clouds, carrying their sleeping sister with them. When Liz woke up, they had flown far away from the mainland. They finally arrived at the land they dreamed of. There are towering blue mountains with cedar forests, castles and many cities. Leda was placed on a boulder, right in a cave. The ground was covered with vines like a beautiful carpet. Being able to meet and live with her brothers again, Lydia was even more eager to find a way to free them. That thought never left her. One night she dreamed of a fairy in the castle of Morgan telling her how to free her brothers. The fairy said,
"You have to go pick nettles from the cemetery, and your hand will swell, and it will be extremely painful. Use your foot to crush the tree, and get a hemp fiber that you will use to weave 11 long-sleeved shirts. After weaving, you put the cloak on the 11 swans, and that way the evil magic will disappear. But this is the heaviest prohibition. From the moment you start weaving until you finish weaving, you are not allowed to say a single word. If you say just one word, that voice will be a knife piercing your brothers' hearts."
She woke up and immediately started working to free her brothers. After 2 days of hard work, her hands were swollen and extremely painful. But she had begun to weave long-sleeved dresses of dark green nettle fiber. She finished weaving one shirt and began weaving the second. Suddenly, the sound of a hunter's horn rang out. A moment later all the hunters gathered at the cave entrance. "This is a hunting trip for the king who rules this land." The king walked straight towards Lizda. Never before had he seen such a beautiful young girl. He asked her,
"How did you come to this place, O beautiful girl?"
Lizda just shook her head.
"Please follow me," the king said, "you will stay in my palace."
The king put her on the horse's saddle and returned with him, then held a very lavish party. The wedding ceremony was performed. However, she still didn't say a word. But the king still decided to marry her. So the mute girl suddenly became the queen. She was still mute, and at night she still went to the cemetery to pluck nettles and quietly weave clothes for her brothers. Taking this opportunity, the old priest further affirmed to the king, she was a witch who had bewitched the king and all the people. The king did not believe at first but gradually followed her steps. By the time her work was almost finished, she only had to weave one last shirt when he ordered her to go to prison. In prison, she continued to weave the last shirt. Now her brothers Swans knew that she was imprisoned, and they also knew that the day was coming when she would be burned at the stake. One night before dawn, they came and knocked on the king's door asking for an audience. Just then the sun rose and 11 swans flew above the funeral pyre, where the innocent lizard was executed. Many people went to see it. Miss Lizzie walked to the funeral pyre and continued weaving as she walked. She still held the bundle of woven clothes next to her. People pushed each other and were about to snatch the bundle of clothes from her hand. But at that moment 11 swans flew in. She quickly threw 11 clothes onto the flock of swans. Immediately they transformed into 11 young princes. The youngest prince was left with a swan wing instead of an arm. Because a shirt was unfinished and one arm was missing. Lida shouted,
"Now I can say it, I am innocent."
The people saw this and quickly knelt before her like a female saint. But she fell down and fainted in her brother's arms because she worked too much, worried too much, and was in too much pain. She was exhausted. Before the crowd, the eldest prince declared,
"That's right, our sister is not guilty at all."
Then the prince told the story. The king sounded extremely moved. He picked a flower and put it on Liz's chest. She woke up, filled with joy and happiness. Suddenly all the church bells that no one had rung rang out. Birds flocked to the king's palace and a grand festival opened. A huge festival that has never happened before in this country.
Thank you for watching my video. Subscribe to the channel to learn more useful knowledge.